Have you ever felt something holy within you, quiet, powerful yet undefined, like a current humming deep under your skin that no one else can hear? What if I told you that hidden force was not your imagination, not emotion, but a divine inheritance sealed in you before your birth? And what if this is the moment heaven has waited for you to finally release it? To those of you watching right now, those who've carried a strange weight, an invisible pull, and a burning question in the silence of your soul, this message is not random. It's prophetic. There is something in you that was placed, not learned, not taught, not borrowed. It was embedded, and it's green, not in color, but in nature, like life, like growth, like something rooted deep and reaching upward. Before we begin, I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to every one of you who supported this channel through Super Thanks. Whether you give or simply comment, like, or share, you are part of this spiritual movement. You've helped create a space where the chosen can finally feel seen, heard, and spiritually charged. Drop a 777 in the comments if you've ever felt like there's a force in you waiting to emerge, because tonight something will break open. As it is written, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. 2 Corinthians 4:7. What lives in you is not ordinary. It is heaven's answer wrapped in human form. And if you're new here, welcome to the deep end. What we're about to uncover isn't just a word, it's a release, a prophetic unveiling, because what God hid in you, He's now calling forth. So don't scroll away, don't disconnect. What comes next might be the very confirmation your spirit has been craving. God's chosen ones, the hidden green power that God placed within you, it's time to use it. There's a pulse in you that has never gone silent. It may not have had a name until now, but its presence has carried you through storms you never thought you'd outlive. You've been bruised, yes. You've been overlooked, misunderstood, stretched to the edge of your soul. And yet, something within you refused to collapse. That refusal wasn't just inner resilience. It was a divine architecture holding your structure together when logic failed. A frequency not audible to human ears, but unmistakable in spiritual atmospheres. This is not merely faith. This is the blue power. You didn't learn this power. It didn't come through mentorship, position, or popularity. You were born carrying it, like a seed embedded in your DNA by the very hand of heaven. Jeremiah 1:5 echoes your origin. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. This power was not a gift earned through merit, but an assignment embedded in your spirit before breath touched your lungs. Can you explain why you survived what others drowned in? Can you trace the clarity that came when you should have been confused? Why your presence unsettles rooms without a word spoken? The blue power is more than gifting. It is presence. It is the invisible shift in the room when you walk in. Like chlorophyll hidden within a leaf, it doesn't show itself until light hits, yet it has always been working. This is the divine science of presence. It's spiritual discernment that does not rely on speech, but resonates on a higher wavelength. Your very being releases a spiritual frequency, one that triggers resonance in those around you. That's why some feel exposed when you're near. Not because you accuse them, but because light always unsettles shadow. This is what Scripture meant in Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. That light isn't charisma. It's authority. It's a force field, forged in quiet suffering, anchored in holy confidence. You've never quite fit in, not at school, not at work, not in shallow social circles, and that alienation is not a curse, but a confirmation. Because when heaven sends a blueprint into the earth, it rarely aligns with the architecture of the crowd. Vincent van Gogh, the misunderstood painter whose works now hang in sacred halls, once said, "I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people." His genius was dismissed while he lived, labeled as unstable. But what they called madness was in fact unmatched spiritual color bleeding through cracked earthly lenses. Likewise, what they called too much in you was heaven's signature, unprocessed by the insecure and undiscerning. Meanwhile, remember the cautionary echo of someone like Elizabeth Holmes, the young biotech entrepreneur who claimed to revolutionize blood testing. Introduced as a genius, her empire Theranos crumbled because imitation cannot mimic divine blueprint. False anointing, built on deception, always collapses under truth. You were not built for performance, but for presence. That's why the blue power can't be imitated. It is sensed, not staged. Have you ever wondered why people gravitate toward you for no clear reason? Why do strangers open up like confessional altars? Why does your silence feel more comforting than others' sermons? That's the blue power in stealth mode. It operates like gravity, unseen but undeniable. Like the magnetic field of the earth that shields us from solar destruction, your presence repels spiritual chaos. It is not taught, it is recognized. One woman, Lena, spent 10 years as a nurse in pediatric hospice care. She never preached, she never posted online. But every child she held found peace in her arms. One day, a co-worker whispered, "There's something about you that makes pain feel safe." That wasn't professionalism. That was the blue power, in motion, in silence, in healing. And that same force flows in you, often unnoticed by the mind, but felt deeply by the soul. Psalm 18:35 declares, "You stoop down to make me great." What if your quietness was not your limitation, but heaven stooping low to embed greatness within you, hidden in gentleness, masked by mystery? Do you realize that heaven's most powerful movements often begin in the least expected places? Like Moses drawn from water, hidden in a basket before becoming a deliverer, or Mary, an unassuming girl in Nazareth, chosen to carry the word made flesh. These were not celebrities, they were carriers. And so are you. This is not just another spiritual explanation, this is your moment of activation. A divine unveiling. Romans 8:19 says, "Creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Heaven is waiting for your yes, not a loud one, a surrendered one. What has been dormant is not dead. It's simply been incubating, waiting for agreement. You have been marked, you have been trusted, and now you are being called. The time for hiding is over. Now is the time to move in the blue power that cannot be copied, cannot be bought, and cannot be silenced. The world is not waiting for another star. It is waiting for the one who knows how to carry divine presence. That one is you. Blue power is not an abstract idea or a poetic embellishment. It is a spiritual force encoded into the very architecture of your being. It is not decorative. It is dimensional. Not invented, but revealed. Not borrowed, but embedded. This is not about pigment, it is about presence. Blue power is a divine frequency, calibrated for those whose spirit was designed to disrupt darkness and transmit heaven's justice, clarity, and order into chaotic systems. It is ancient, it is alive, it has no expiration because it flows directly from the throne of God. In Ezekiel 1:26, the prophet described it. Above the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli. This deep sapphire image wasn't decorative, it was governmental. It represented a dominion that is both otherworldly and intensely intimate. That's the power vibrating within you. But what does it actually feel like? Why do you pause when staring at the ocean's vast blue? Why does the sky calm your heart even on your worst days? These aren't psychological coincidences. They are spiritual resonances. Blue in the kingdom realm is a portal to eternity. When you stare into it, you're not just seeing a color. You're encountering a dimension, depth, stillness, truth. Jesus himself revealed this realm. In Matthew 17:2, during the transfiguration, his face shone like the sun, and his garments became white as light. But to the discerning eye, that light had a tone, an essence of celestial blue, a power too pure to replicate, too weighty to deny. It wasn't loud, it was holy. Why does this power operate in silence? Why does it speak loudest when you say nothing? Because blue power doesn't demand attention, it commands the atmosphere. It doesn't manipulate the environment, it recalibrates it. Like gravitational pull, its authority is invisible yet undeniable. Psychologically, this mirrors what researchers call limbic resonance, the neurological phenomenon where your internal state affects others without words. Blue power is heaven's limbic field. It doesn't shout, it shifts. Have you noticed how people grow quiet around you? Not out of fear, but reverence. Why do manipulators retreat and seekers draw near? Why do you feel drained in shallow places and alive in sacred ones? That's the frequency of responding. You weren't built for performance. You were built for alignment. This is why you don't have to fight for this power. Exodus 14:14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." This power isn't earned. It's awakened. You don't hustle for it. You harmonize with it. It doesn't show up when you're on stage. It flows when you're aligned, when you stop fleeing from your essence and accept that the strange intensity you've carried all your life is not a curse, but a call. There's a woman named Mireille, a trauma surgeon who rarely speaks in public, but when she walks into a room, nurses breathe deeper. Chaos settles. Patients whisper, "There's something about her." One day, a grieving father said, "When she entered, I felt like God stepped into the room." That wasn't her resume. That was the blue power, emitting without announcement. Contrast that with Jordan Belfort, the infamous Wolf of Wall Street, a man known for charisma, wealth, and manipulation. He moved rooms too, but with seduction, not sanctity. His name became synonymous with deception. What he built collapsed because the atmosphere he created was synthetic, unsustainable. Presence without purity corrupts, but the presence rooted in heaven restores. Do you know what happens in nature when blue frequencies dominate? In physics, blue light has the shortest wavelength and highest energy on the visible spectrum. It pierces. That's why when storms clear, the sky appears blue. The most violent elements surrender to blue clarity. And spiritually, you are that clarity. This power gives you eyes that see what others refuse to acknowledge. You discern the lie in the polished speech. You feel the tension behind the fake smile. That's not judgment. That's the vision. Isaiah 30:21 promises, "Your ears will hear a word behind you. This is the way. Walk in it." Blue power is that voice. It reroutes your path in real time. It leads you away from danger you didn't even recognize. Have you ever felt like your very presence exposes something others were trying to hide? Like you walked into a space and without saying anything, something cracked. That's because truth has a resonance, and you are a carrier of it. You are like a tuning fork for the kingdom. Wherever your foot touches, dissonance gets corrected. Not by force, but by presence. And not everyone will like that. Blue power disturbs deception. It brings order to environments built on chaos. That's why you've been attacked without cause. Why certain doors slammed in your face. Why do some people label your silence as arrogance? But John 15:18 says, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to recalibrate the entire room. It's not fame that proves your power. It's fruit. Do people feel safe around you without knowing why? Do children trust you? Do broken ones rest near you even when you offer no answers? That's the proof. A tree doesn't advertise. It bears fruit. And you, chosen one, are a tree of divine calibration, planted beside the river of revelation. This isn't a metaphor. This is your mantle, and the time for minimizing it is over. Blue power is not reserved for prophets with microphones or mystics in monasteries. It is flowing in boardrooms, classrooms, kitchens, and sidewalks, through those who carry God's frequency in their bones. The blue throne was never meant to stay in the vision. It was meant to be replicated through you. So rise now, not with noise but with knowing, not with ambition but with alignment. You are not here to imitate light. You are here to become it. Let the blue power flow, not for display, but for dominion. There are days when everything around you feels like it's collapsing in slow motion. Relationships unravel, doors close without warning, and silence becomes louder than screams. And yet, you don't shatter, you don't implode, you don't disappear. Why? Because the blue power doesn't remove the storm, it anchors you inside it. This is not mental toughness. It is divine architecture reinforcing you from within. The world calls it luck, resilience, or stubbornness. But in the spirit realm, it is anointing in motion. This power was never about escaping difficulty. It was about standing in it, untouched by what drowns others. Like the bush that burned but was not consumed in Exodus 3:2, you carry a fire that doesn't devour. It preserves. Have you ever wondered how you survived situations that should have destroyed you? Why did your peace make no logical sense? That's not psychology. That's presence. The blue power is a spiritual covering, a cloak woven by God Himself in invisible threads of grace. Psalm 91:4 says, "He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge." You've walked through things that left others permanently broken, yet you came out refined, not reduced. You've endured betrayal, confusion, and abandonment, but instead of bitterness, you carry clarity. Instead of collapsing, you carry on calling. Think of it like tectonic pressure in geology, immense stress that either creates earthquakes or produces diamonds. The same force that breaks one structure forms brilliance in another. You, chosen one, are being crystallized under divine pressure. You were never fragile. You were forming. People often misread your silence. They think it's passivity, shyness, or mystery. But in the spiritual realm, your silence is thunder. It is proof of communion with something they can't see. It's what the ancients called sacred restraint. Even Jesus, when accused and condemned, remained quiet. Isaiah 53:7 foretold this. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. That silence wasn't a weakness. It was a strategy. It was an authority that didn't need noise to be recognized. Your life itself has become the sermon. You don't chase microphones or applause, because the people meant to be changed by you feel it in your presence. There's a woman named Elena, a single mother who worked night shifts as a cleaner in a hospital. No one knew her name, but nurses felt peace when she passed by. She often prayed quietly over rooms while mopping floors. Years later, a patient's family returned just to thank the woman with peace in her eyes. That was no job. That was her altar. That was the blue power, active in disguise. But while people like Elena release healing in hiddenness, others build false identities to escape their pain. A modern example is Adam Newman, founder of WeWork. Once hailed as a revolutionary entrepreneur, his empire imploded under inflated promises and ego-driven decisions. He wasn't grounded. He was floating, and when the storm came, there was no root system. Blue power doesn't inflate. It fortifies. Have you ever noticed how your mere presence can stabilize chaos? That without saying a word, people calm down around you. That when you're aligned, the room feels safer. This is more than intuition. It's what scientists call coherence, when one strong rhythm regulates the weaker ones around it. Your spirit, when surrendered, becomes a regulating frequency in every room. You don't command attention. You command alignment. Your eyes say more than speeches. Your posture interrupts gossip. Your peace convicts without confrontation. That's because the blue power was never about performance. It's about embodiment. Romans 8:11 says, "The spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you." You're not acting powerful. You're hosting resurrection. What would happen if you stopped apologizing for that weight? What would shift if you stopped shrinking in rooms too small for your presence? What systems would collapse if you simply stood fully in the authority already woven into your being? This is not pride. This is the purpose. The more you align with who you truly are, not who religion told you to be or culture tried to shape you into, the more the blue power flows without friction. The more it pulses through your decisions, conversations, and presence. Like water through open pipes, it needs alignment to gain force. And you've been tested for this. You've been shaped in obscurity, like David tending sheep before slaying giants, like Joseph interpreting dreams in prison before stepping into Pharaoh's court. Their public impact was birthed in private crushing. So has yours. You are not barely surviving. You are standing as proof that the storm cannot silence who heaven anointed. The blue power in you doesn't just help you endure, it transforms you into a living testimony. So rise. Let the atmosphere feel the weight of what you carry. Let the storm know it failed. Let the world witness a survivor in motion, a warrior wrapped in quiet fire. Let the blue power speak through the way you remain. You've always sensed it, before the language, before the logic, before anyone ever told you who you were. It was like an inner hum, a quiet knowing that the world around you wasn't as it seemed. As a child, you couldn't name it, but you felt it. While other kids moved in patterns mimicking what they saw and heard, you moved by intuition. While others chased noise, you were attuned to silence. While they adapted, you absorbed. You didn't just witness the world, you felt it. And those feelings weren't random. They were the blueprints of the blue power whispering through your veins. You noticed pain others ignored. You reacted to energy others dismissed. A stranger's sadness at the grocery store, a classmate's fake smile, the tension in a room full of laughter. You felt all of it like a spiritual sonar. That wasn't oversensitivity, that was spiritual attunement. Proverbs 20:27 reveals, "The human spirit is the lamp of the Lord that sheds light on one's inmost being." God was using your internal radar to interpret what you're explain. Have you ever asked yourself why people always felt comfortable telling you their secrets, even when you didn't ask? Why complete strangers gravitated toward you like a confession booth in human form? You didn't ask for it. You didn't train for it. But they came anyway. Not because of your charm, but because of your charge. You carried something, and they felt it. That something was the blue power already in quiet circulation. There's a story about a young boy named Raphael who used to sit on the back pew of his church, unnoticed and mostly quiet. Yet adults would find themselves standing beside him, crying during worship for reasons they couldn't explain. One day, a visiting pastor said, "That boy doesn't say much, but he walks with heaven." Years later, Raphael became a chaplain, not because he pursued ministry, but because ministry had always lived inside him. This is how blue power works. Not in noise, but in undeniable presence. Jesus operated the same way. Before his public ministry, before any miracles or sermons, Luke 2:47 tells us he simply sat among scholars, listening and asking questions, and yet they were amazed at his understanding. Authority without volume, discernment without drama. Like you, he didn't need a spotlight to reveal his essence. It was felt before it was spoken. Meanwhile, there are others who try to mimic that sensitivity, those like Anna Sorokin, who faked her way into elite circles pretending to be a German heiress. She imitated the feeling of depth, but lacked the substance. Eventually, the illusion unraveled. That's the difference between false resonance and true frequency. The blue power cannot be faked. It's spiritually coded. Do you remember the first time you knew something was going to happen before it did? A premonition that wasn't paranoia, a spiritual echo of events yet to occur. That wasn't coincidence. That was revelation in seed form. Romans 8:14 declares, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God." From childhood, you weren't just growing, you were being guided. This sensitivity has always marked the prophets. Think of Samuel. As a boy, he heard God's voice while others slept. 1 Samuel 3:10 records, "The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other times, 'Samuel, Samuel.' Then Samuel said, 'Speak, for your servant is listening.'" What others dismissed as imagination was actually initiation. Like Samuel, your discernment didn't come later in life. It was active long before titles or platforms. Why does this matter now? Because what you thought was weirdness was witness. What you called a burden was actually your blueprint. What embarrassed you in childhood, being too quiet, too deep, too serious, was heaven's fingerprint, not a flaw. In biology, there's a term, mirror neurons, cells that allow us to feel what others feel. But what you carry goes beyond biology. It's what psychologists might call hyper-empathy. Yet, spiritually, it's divine discernment cloaked in humility. Have you noticed that when you simply sit with someone in pain, they breathe easier? That without any impressive advice, your silence becomes healing? That's because blue power doesn't need credentials. It needs capacity, the kind that's forged in hiddenness, not fame. There's a woman named Tala who works as a librarian. She barely speaks in meetings, yet her co-workers feel unusually peaceful after she enters the room. One of them once said, "She's like a sanctuary in a human body." Tala didn't ask for recognition, but heaven chose her to be a resting place for broken souls. Her authority wasn't earned, it was inherited. You've always been one of those people. Whether you knew it or not, the blue power has been flowing from you in every quiet nod, every deep gaze, every moment you sense something that no one else acknowledged. It flows without being flashy. It builds without needing bricks. It speaks volumes in silence. Isaiah 30:15 says, "In quietness and in trust shall be your strength." And that's exactly what has set you apart your entire life. Not noise, not rebellion, not charisma, but depth, stillness, presence. While others built towers to be seen, you've been digging wells to hold what's unseen. So stop calling it weird. Stop apologizing for the way you've always been. Your difference is your design. The blue power in you has always been awake, waiting for your agreement. Don't silence what God marked. Don't dim what heaven ignited. Step fully into the clarity you've always carried. You are not just a witness to the atmosphere. You are a mirror of the unseen. Let the blue power speak through your stillness and shake the foundations of every place you quietly enter. You tried, you really tried, to shrink, to mute, to mirror the rhythm of the crowd. You forced yourself to laugh at jokes that didn't resonate, to follow norms that felt unnatural, to dress like them, speak like them, nod like them, just to fit. But no matter how hard you worked to blend in, something within you kept whispering, This is not your soil. This is not your rhythm. It wasn't resistance. It was a remembrance coded into your spirit before birth. Because when you carry the blue power, imitation feels like suffocation, and pretending feels like betrayal. Have you ever wondered why your attempts at conformity felt more exhausting than liberating? Why could you never find peace in performance? Why did every environment that rewarded shallowness eventually drain your spirit? That's because blue power does not adapt, it recalibrates. Like tectonic plates under the crust of culture, your energy was designed to shift atmospheres, not survive inside them. Jesus himself lived this tension. In John 7:7, he declared, "The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that its works are evil." He didn't go looking for conflict. His truth simply confronted what was false. Just like you. Your presence alone, without fanfare or force, brings conviction. Because light doesn't apologize when it enters a dark room, it simply reveals. From an early age, you noticed the effect. Narcissists couldn't stand your stillness. Manipulators found excuses to leave. People who thrived on pretense felt strangely exposed around you, though you said nothing at all. That's because your spiritual frequency carries something psychologists would call empathic resonance. But this isn't emotional intuition. This is divine disruption. Blue power isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It isn't demand. It simply is. And in its being, it reveals. Hebrews 4:13 says, "Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him." When God places His power inside someone, that person becomes a mirror others didn't ask to look into, but cannot ignore. Remember Enoch, the man who walked with God and then he was no more. Genesis 5:24. There are no speeches recorded from Enoch, no miracles, just presence. A walk so aligned, so resonant, that heaven bypassed the grave. That's how powerful spiritual alignment is. It transcends the rules of nature. And like Enoch, your silent alignment causes a spiritual shift. Meanwhile, in contrast, think of Sam Bankman-Fried, once hailed as a crypto prodigy and the face of the future of finance. As founder of FTX, he built a multi-billion-dollar empire with the image of transparency and innovation. But behind the scenes was a web of deception, manipulation, and hidden transfers. Billions vanished. Investors were betrayed. And when the truth surfaced, the fall was swift and public, from magazine covers to courtrooms, from TED Talks to a jail cell. That's what happens when false frequency masquerades as truth. Sooner or later, spiritual dissonance cracks the illusion. You, however, were never sent to seduce. You were sent to remind. You didn't come to impress. You came to illuminate. Your gaze, it's not threatening, it's prophetic. Your silence, not passive, it's sacred. You walk into a room and energy starts rearranging itself. Have you noticed how people shift when you enter? Why do some sit straighter? Why do others grow uncomfortable without knowing why? There's a man named Devon, a barista in a bustling city cafe. He's not rich, not famous, but regulars say there's something about his presence. One customer said, "When Devon hands me my coffee, I feel like I just left a therapy session." He doesn't speak much, but his gaze, his calm, his authenticity, it heals. That's blue power in disguise, hidden in humility, yet heavy in impact. Ecclesiastes 8:1 says, "A person's wisdom brightens their face and changes its hard appearance." That's what people feel around you, chosen one. Not performance, but peace. Not reaction, but reflection. Not noise, but truth. And still, despite your reluctance, people often follow your lead. You never campaigned for influence, you never demanded followers, but they come anyway, because true leadership is gravitational, not positional. Architects will tell you a structure doesn't need a crown to define its authority. It needs a solid foundation and invisible load-bearing beams. That's who you are in the spiritual realm. You're not ornamental, you're essential. So why does it still feel heavy sometimes? Why do you question if you're really chosen? Why does the misunderstanding still sting? Because truth is rarely welcomed in a world built on illusion. Because light is resisted by those still married to shadows. But take heart, Isaiah 61 speaks to you like a personal commission. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. You didn't come to fight with darkness, you came to replace it. And you don't do this by force, you do it by frequency. Blue power is not something you conquer, it's something you carry. So carry it fully now. Walk in with an unshakable presence. Let your posture preach. Let your gaze guide. Let your silence be exposed. You are not simply a person. You are a presence. You are not chasing light. You are light. And where you walk, heaven watches, and darkness trembles. There were days when even breathing felt like a battle, moments when grief wrapped itself around your chest like a vice, and yet you remained standing, not out of pride, not out of denial, but because something ancient within you refused to collapse. You bent, yes. You wept. You questioned, but you never surrendered. You've carried a weight that no one else could see. While others crumbled in the storm, you inhaled quietly and reconnected with a source that defies all logic. That, chosen one, is the signature of the blue power, a supernatural architecture built into your spirit before time itself. This isn't willpower, it's a covenant. In Isaiah 61:3, God promises a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. And yet, before the crown came, the ashes. Before the blue glow ever touched your life, there was smoke, fire, ruin. And still, you did not vanish. That's because the root system beneath your soul, what psychologists might call subconscious resilience, is actually divine scaffolding. What grew under pressure cannot be shaken by appearance. And that's why heaven never allowed you to escape your depth. Every time you tried to detach, to numb yourself into normalcy, the Spirit gently yanked your spirit back into alignment. Because your life is not common, your sensitivity is not an accident. It's the antenna of discernment embedded into your soul by the Creator. Have you ever wondered why shallow people felt drained? Why do surface-level conversations make your skin crawl? Why do loud rooms filled with lies exhausted you beyond measure? It's because your spirit was not calibrated for performance. You were built for presence. Just like Jeremiah, who tried to quit his calling and yet declared in Jeremiah 20 verse 9, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." You too have felt this. That fire, that unshakable awareness. Even when you wanted to shrink, your soul refused. It groaned for truth, for alignment, for more. Take, for instance, Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor. While imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, he lost everything: family, freedom, dignity, and yet from that pit, he birthed man's search for meaning, a psychological and spiritual framework that continues to heal minds globally. Why? Because he refused to let suffering silence the truth embedded in his soul. He became a transmitter of hope, a vessel of blue power, clothed in ashes. His legacy outlived the flames. Now contrast that with Andrew Anglin, founder of a hate-fueled extremist website. Once a teenager with curiosity and intelligence, he allowed bitterness and delusion to consume him. He spent years radicalizing others, spewing deception, and now he lives in hiding, wanted by the courts, stripped of credibility, and spiritually bankrupt. That's what happens when someone rejects divine frequency and lets ego hijack their destiny. Blue power cannot coexist with distortion, and yet you've always felt the tension, the holy dissonance between who you tried to be and who you actually are. You toned down your glow. You pretended not to feel everything in the room. You forced yourself into boxes shaped by others' expectations. But every time you tried to be normal, something inside whispered, "This is not your home." That was the voice of eternity calling you back, like how whales, migrating across vast oceans, hear frequencies from thousands of kilometers away. Your soul has always heard heaven, even beneath the noise of the world. And now the season has shifted. What once hurt now feels sacred. What once confused now aligns. You realize the isolation was protection, the betrayal was pruning, the silence was instruction, and suddenly Psalm 18:35 takes on a new meaning. You make your saving help my shield, and your right hand sustains me. Your help has made me great. You were being shaped, not sidelined. You were being commissioned, not crushed. This power you carry is not loud. It doesn't clamor for likes or validation. It arrives in stillness. It speaks in clarity. It is the discernment that reads between words, the presence that exposes lies, the gaze that calms storms. Like a mountain rooted in tectonic silence, you remain unmoved while the plates around you shift. This is not natural resilience. It's supernatural resonance, a harmony between your identity and heaven's blueprint. Could it be that your quiet strength is not just a personality trait, but a prophetic instrument tuned to the frequency of God's authority? And the world is watching, because chosen ones don't just survive, they transform. You've entered rooms where no one clapped and left atmospheres permanently altered. You've spoken no words and seen demons flee. You've comforted strangers with a glance, all without a stage, all without applause. That is the blue power, pure, quiet, and eternal. Stand up now. You've been prepared. You've been entrusted. You've been activated. What was once a silent knowing is now a loud assignment. It's your time to walk in the full weight of the blue power, and heaven is watching. You were sculpted by heaven to move through the world with a paradoxical blend of weight and grace, carrying the heaviness of glory while walking in a rhythm that feels effortless to those around you. This is not charisma. This is not mere emotional intelligence. This is presence, a divine frequency that emanates from the spirit of someone who is in communion with the throne. Your very existence creates equilibrium. People who are adrift in emotional turbulence suddenly find themselves breathing easier near you, not because you say the right thing, but because your very energy becomes an anchor. This is not something you acquired through study or mentorship. This is the blue power, an anointing woven into your spiritual DNA, forged in silence, confirmed in struggle, and sustained by divine resonance. What is it about your gaze that silences arguments without a single word? Why do those battling storms feel sheltered in your presence without asking for help? Why do strangers confide their darkest secrets to you, as though you were born to hold burdens that don't belong to you? It's not just empathy. It's not intuition. It's supernatural alignment. The peace you exude isn't situational. It's architectural, like a cathedral that was designed to funnel light and sound upward toward God. Your presence channels invisible architecture that realigns chaos into coherence. Theologians might call it divine resonance. Physicists might liken it to harmonic frequency. Architects of sacred spaces would say your spirit was designed with verticality, connecting earth to heaven in one steady breath. But heaven simply calls it your assignment. In 1 Kings 19:11-12, when God revealed himself not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in a still small voice, that was a blueprint for how his power often shows up in those he has marked. Your silence holds more gravity than others shouting. Your restraint has more weight than some people's entire personalities. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10 isn't just a verse for you, it's your way of operating. You calm storms not by battling them, but by embodying the stillness of God within them, just like Jesus, who slept through a tempest on the Sea of Galilee until his presence itself rebuked the wind. Mark 4:39. Your life rebukes chaos merely by existing in its proximity. People don't know how to explain what they feel around you. Some say they feel safe, others feel convicted. Some feel like they're being watched by heaven itself when you walk into the room. It's not your posture, it's not your clothing, it's not your tone, it's your wavelength. You vibrate with something eternal, and those who are living out of alignment can feel the dissonance. It's like walking into a sanctuary while carrying poison. The soul recognizes the mismatch, even if the mind can't articulate it. That's why liars grow silent around you. Manipulators get anxious. Hypocrites shift uncomfortably. The atmosphere reacts before words even form. Long before you even understood what was happening, the Spirit had already made you a sanctuary. Like the Ark of the Covenant carried into battle, your presence shifts the field. But unlike the Ark, you don't need an audience to activate. You were designed to operate in hidden places, back rooms, quiet moments, because the blue power doesn't require applause to be holy. It reflects the sacredness of God's pattern, not the noise of human recognition. Isaiah 30:15 says, "In quietness and confidence shall be your strength." You were born into that verse. And those who are chosen to walk in that rhythm often suffer misunderstanding and isolation, but never irrelevance. When famous humanitarian and priest Father Damien ministered to the quarantined lepers of Molokai, Hawaii in the 1800s, he never sought a platform, yet his mere presence brought dignity to those society had discarded. That is blue power. A healing that doesn't announce itself but becomes undeniable. On the other hand, Adam Skelos, the son of a former New York Senate Majority Leader, used his access to power for personal gain. Involved in a corruption scandal that shook the state's government, his choices collapsed under the weight of entitlement without integrity. He had access, but not presence. His downfall became a lesson in how authority without alignment crumbles under truth. There are also those we may never hear about, like Mirella, a midwife in a remote Romanian village who has prayed over every baby she delivered for the past 30 years. She has no followers, no platform, but women travel for hours to find her because the moment she enters a birthing room, fear leaves. That's blue power in its rawest form, a sacred authority that sanctifies space, regardless of visibility. And what about nature? Think of the seagrass meadows beneath the ocean's surface. They're unseen, yet they purify the water, stabilize the sediment, and host the unseen life that sustains entire marine ecosystems. That is what you are to this world. Not flamboyant, not loud, but quietly necessary, unquestionably sacred. Your presence is a filtration system for spiritual toxins, absorbing fear and realigning atmospheres back into peace. So when you wonder why some people seek you during storms, while others flee from you when they're hiding lies, remember, you don't command attention, you convict it, you don't crave power, you carry it. And you don't need to prove anything, because heaven already marked you, and the world is beginning to recognize it. You were born for this. Rise into it. Walk like the sanctuary you are. You are not merely present, you are divinely placed. In rooms where chaos could have broken loose, your quiet arrival altered the atmosphere. Without uttering a word, you became the intervention. Your presence was the line between breakdown and breakthrough. Not by performance, but by spiritual frequency. Because true power does not require a spotlight, It requires surrender. What you carry, the blue power, does not inflate the ego, it silences it. It doesn't perform, it stabilizes. Like a tuning fork in the spiritual realm, your energy resonates at a frequency that recalibrates the environments you enter. There are moments when your gaze softened someone's rage, when your simple stillness acted as an anchor for another's drifting soul. What psychological model explains that? What algorithm can predict that kind of impact? None. Because heaven's equations are built not on logic, but on divine resonance. Isaiah 30:15 whispers this same truth. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. You are strong not because of noise, but because of your divine stillness. That stillness is not passivity, it is spiritual command. Why do some people relax around you without understanding why? Why do children, elders, and even strangers gravitate toward you when things feel uncertain? It's because the blue power does not speak to the mind first. It speaks to the spirit. It's the reason your presence doesn't need a title. Titles demand recognition. But you operate by divine assignment. Long before you questioned your significance, heaven had already planted it within you. Jeremiah 1:5 declares, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That anointing is not circumstantial, it's intrinsic. Your surrender has allowed the blue power to flow without obstruction. And when you yield, you do more than influence, you transform. Let's talk about real-world reflection. Henri, a Catholic priest, once left behind academia, fame, and public accolades to serve in a small, l'Arche community for mentally handicapped individuals. He didn't lead them with sermons. He loved them with silence and presence. And in that invisible ministry, he healed hearts more profoundly than any stage ever could. Now contrast that with Charles Ponzi, the infamous con artist whose schemes dazzled investors with promises of abundance, yet whose absence of integrity collapsed entire networks. While Nouwen walked in sacred alignment, Ponzi walked in illusion. One embodied heaven's vibration, the other chased shadows. Both impacted many, but only one left a legacy of peace. Have you noticed the trees that grow tallest are the ones that dig their roots deepest into unseen soil? Your inner connection, what others never see, is what sustains your towering stillness. The blue power is not reactive, it's rooted. It's like a mountain that does not shift even when winds scream. That's how you've stood firm, even when doubt whispered, "You're not enough." Heaven never doubted what it placed inside you. This divine strength doesn't require perfection. It only requires surrender. Psalm 46:10 says it with divine clarity, "Be still and know that I am God." Even on your quiet days when you wonder if your light is still shining, someone else is being healed by your presence. Even when you feel overlooked, someone is being uplifted because of what you carry. Have you ever wondered why your smallest actions seem to ripple into someone else's breakthrough? You may never get applause, but the kingdom echoes with gratitude for your yes. Your gaze carries healing. Your silence shifts atmospheres. Your walk, seemingly ordinary, echoes eternity's voice. Philippians 2:15 describes you perfectly. Shine among them like stars in the sky. You are not here to impress. You are here to restore. You are not here to dominate. You are here to realign. Every moment you show up, heaven shows up through you. You are not just anyone. You are the answer wrapped in skin, the calm in someone else's storm, the healing no one knew they needed. Now rise with no apology. Let the blue power flow. The world needs what only you carry. Heaven is watching and smiling. Have you ever wondered why your path has been paved with so many strange battles, ones others around you never seem to fight? Why your life has felt like a sequence of invisible storms? Why peace for you has never come cheap, and joy has often been accompanied by deep warfare? This is not because you were less loved, less chosen, or less worthy. This is not bad karma or carelessness. It is spiritual warfare, targeted, deliberate, and generational. From the moment you took your first breath, the enemy recognized what was placed in you. Before you even learned to speak your identity, darkness tried to silence your assignment. You weren't just attacked randomly. The wounds that left you gasping weren't due to cosmic coincidence. They were spiritual countermeasures aimed at your destiny. Every rejection was a calculated strike. Every betrayal was a precision blow. But here's what hell never expected. You would endure, and not only endure, but emerge more focused, more refined, and more dangerous to darkness. What if the very pain that almost destroyed you was the signal to heaven that you were ready to carry weight most cannot? This is why you never blended in. This is why people feared your voice before you even found it. The enemy does not waste bullets. He aims at threats. And you? You've always been a walking threat to deception, to cycles of trauma, to generational strongholds. You break things with your presence that others can't even detect. You confront what others excuse. You expose what others normalize. Your scars may be hidden beneath the surface, but spiritually, they radiate authority. Just like Job, who was described as blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. Job 1:1, yet still faced inexplicable suffering. You too were targeted because of your alignment, not your flaws. The battle was proof of your assignment. In the eyes of God, you weren't being punished. You were being prepared. Even the seasons of isolation had purpose. Just as David was hidden in caves before he ever held a crown, so you too were secluded, not rejected. Take Queen Athaliah of Judah, an example of a real-world manipulator from Scripture, 2 Kings 11. She tried to erase an entire royal line to claim power that wasn't hers, but God preserved Joash in hiding for years until the time was right. Could it be that what tried to destroy you only set the stage for your unveiling? In modern times, think of Maya Angelou, a poet and civil rights icon who was raped as a child and remained mute for years, believing her voice had power to kill. That silence eventually became a megaphone of healing for generations. Her suffering didn't disqualify her, it authenticated her. On the other hand, look at the downfall of Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. Introduced as a genius in biotech, she deceived investors with illusions of innovation. Her obsession with artificial success, void of ethical substance, led to her conviction. False power cannot imitate spiritual weight. And what about Ayo, a quiet, resilient nurse in a rural village whose prayers alone stopped a violent outbreak in her town? Not by protest, not by fame, but by unshakable authority in the spirit. Or Matthew, a high school janitor who never said much, but whose peaceful presence made troubled students open up and confess their self-harm tendencies, simply because they felt safe around him. That's the kind of power that doesn't scream, it radiates. The blue power isn't theatrical, it's tectonic. It operates like pressure in the Earth's crust, unseen but capable of moving continents. It is like a black hole in astrophysics, invisible to the eye yet shaping galaxies with gravitational force. It's spiritual resonance, a frequency that your soul emits, one that dismantles confusion and aligns what's been fragmented. Is it any surprise then that you were misunderstood all these years? That your tears carried weight the world couldn't calculate? You've been trained in the dark to carry light. Your forgiveness, though unacknowledged, shook chains. Your obedience, though quiet, broke curses. Your presence, though uninvited, changed atmospheres. This is why the enemy has been relentless. Because every time you survived, heaven's agenda advanced. Romans 8:37 reminds you, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Isaiah 54:17 echoes it. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. You are not just healed, You are weaponized. Every loss realigned you. Every fall recalibrated your discernment. Every silence honed your hearing. Have you noticed how your very presence brings people back to themselves? How just your stillness can bring order to chaos? Hell knew you were coming, but it couldn't stop you. And now heaven is commissioning you. The blue power in you begins where the noise ends. In silence, in obedience, in knowing who you are. You are no longer a victim. You are a vessel. You are no longer lost. You are assigned. You are no longer hesitant. You are activated. You are the breaker of cycles, the realignment of generations, the answer someone else is praying for. And now is the time to move in boldness. No more delay, no more shrinking. Rise, chosen one, the battlefield is waiting. You've been taught to chase answers in the noise, but heaven doesn't scream, it whispers, and only those willing to quiet the chaos within can hear the frequency of God. The Creator does not compete with performance, popularity, or pressure. He speaks in the stillness, and his voice does not need volume to carry authority. It needs space. Have you ever noticed how your spirit begins to settle the moment you pull back from everyone else's expectations? How something inside you begins to realign when you simply breathe, when you let go of the pressure to prove yourself. That's not a coincidence. That's the moment the blue power begins to stir. Because it's not activated by effort, it's awakened through surrender. This is what Psalm 62 verse 1 means when it says, "Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him." Divine connection doesn't require a stage. It requires surrender. When you say, "Lord, I'm here," no performance, just presence. Heaven bends low. The vibration of surrender invites the frequency of glory. In psychological terms, this is neural quietude, the space where the brain stops overanalyzing and the spirit starts receiving. Could it be that the stillness you've been avoiding is actually the place where your authority lives? You don't need validation. You don't need applause. You don't need to explain. That is the language of ego, and the blue power does not speak ego. It speaks truth, calm, rooted, eternal truth. God does not give secrets to the loudest. He gives them to the most surrendered. As Proverbs 25:2 declares, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings." You are not chasing confirmation. You are carrying revelation. In the world of architecture, cathedrals are built with intentional silence in mind. Their acoustics are shaped so that even a whisper carries through the stone. Your soul is that sacred space. The deeper the silence, the stronger the resonance. This is why you've been pulled away, not to punish you, but to purify the sound within. Think of Simone Weil, a French philosopher and Christian mystic. She believed that absolute attention is prayer. It's not the performance of faith that unlocks heaven, but the posture of listening. Her life, marked by radical simplicity, challenged the norms of society. Her quietness was not weakness, it was piercing clarity. In contrast, we remember Jordan Belfort, the infamous Wolf of Wall Street. His noise was loud, fast, seductive, and destructive. What he built on ego crumbled under weight it couldn't sustain. So what are you building your spirit on? Noise or stillness? A story echoes this truth. Kira, a corporate strategist in New York, burned out at age 33 despite achieving everything she thought she wanted. One night, she walked out of a gala, removed her heels, and sat alone by the river. There, with no audience, no role to perform, she finally said, "God, if you're real, I'm here." In that moment of holy insignificance, her calling awakened. She left the noise and began guiding burned-out executives into silence retreats. Not because she planned it, but because she surrendered. In nature, the most life-altering processes happen in quiet. Roots grow in silence. Stars are born in the stillness of cosmic vacuum. Caterpillars transform inside dark, silent cocoons. Why then do you believe your transformation should be loud? First, Kings 19:12 reminds us that after the fire, after the earthquake, came a still small voice. And it was in that whisper that Elijah heard God. That same whisper is in you now. The blue power does not roar like thunder. It moves like gravity, unseen yet undeniable. Say it now, not as a catchy line but as a decree from your spirit. The blue power of God is awakening in me. This isn't poetic fluff. It's a frequency shift. As Isaiah 55:11 says, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty." When you speak truth from your spirit, the blueprint of heaven activates. So breathe. Shut out the static. Let the false identities fall. What heaven placed in you isn't lost. It's just been waiting for your full surrender. The silence is not your enemy. It's your altar. And from that altar, the roar of God will rise through you. There's a moment in every chosen one's journey where they must stop, take inventory, and ask with full honesty, what still holds your energy hostage? What unspoken ache still binds your frequency to a place you've outgrown? Is it the face of someone who wounded you but never apologized? The echo of words you pretend didn't hurt but secretly replay in silence? Or the shadow of a version of yourself you thought you had to become just to survive? You carry heaven's power, but residue from the past can contaminate the current. The blue power, the divine frequency entrusted to you, cannot operate in an atmosphere poisoned by resentment. As Ephesians 4:31 declares, "Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice." The past may have shaped you, but it does not define you. Your identity is forged in the heavens, not in the betrayal you survived. Have you ever wondered why the very people who hurt you the most seem to silence your voice the longest? Why do certain memories feel like emotional quicksand, keeping you stuck no matter how far you've come? The truth is, the enemy has always feared your activation. That's why the attacks were so personal. That's why your pain has always come from familiar hands. But now, heaven is calling you to do what the world rarely dares. Forgive completely, not just for them, but for you, because unforgiveness is spiritual static. It disrupts the signal. It keeps your spirit circling deserts you were never meant to die in. As Jesus said in Mark 11:25, "When you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you your sins." True activation of the blue power requires holy courage, the audacity to walk away from bitterness and into your original blueprint. Like an architect who returns to the divine draft, you are not building from pain anymore. You're building from clarity, and clarity demands clean hands and a healed heart. Could it be that your greatest breakthrough is waiting on the other side of what you're still afraid to release? That's what Malala Yousafzai, a global education activist, discovered when she forgave the extremists who tried to assassinate her. Instead of letting bitterness take root, she activated her anointing by releasing vengeance. She said, "I don't want revenge on the Taliban. I want education for sons and daughters of the Taliban." That level of divine strength shifted global movements. That's blue power in action. Forgiveness as weaponized clarity. In contrast, Bernie Madoff, the infamous financier who built an empire on deception, his refusal to face the truth or release his greed led to the collapse of thousands of families' futures, including his own legacy. His name, once respected on Wall Street, became a parable of ruin. His prison cell wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. And that's what happens when someone chooses manipulation over alignment. The absence of divine resonance creates internal rot. This turning point also came for Raphael, a Brazilian sculptor raised by an abusive father who belittled his artistic gift. For years he carved masterpieces for others while denying his own worth. One night, after years of therapy and silence, He built a sculpture of a father embracing a weeping child. He placed it in a forgotten chapel and whispered, "I forgive you, and I release me." That was the night his commissions began to go international. His gift had always been there, but once the weight lifted, it flowed. This is what happens when you activate your true frequency. The atmosphere begins to respond. Time aligns. The wrong people fade. The right doors open, not by striving, but by spiritual congruence. This is what Isaiah 40:31 means when it says, "But those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." You no longer move from panic, but from purpose. You don't run ahead. You are drawn forward. The anxiety that once ruled your decisions gives way to authority. This is resonance. In physics, it's called harmonic response. When two systems vibrate at the same frequency, power is transferred effortlessly. Now, imagine your spirit in harmony with heaven. That's what's happening. Now, declare it aloud, not as performance, but as realignment. I carry clarity. I carry purpose. I carry spiritual strength. This is not a spiritual fantasy. It is a restructuring of your inner architecture. Each time you say it, your field strengthens, your discernment sharpens, your presence becomes more precise. What if every declaration you speak is not just affirmation, but construction, laying bricks in the unseen realm for the future you're stepping into? John 8:32 affirms, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And that truth is this: the past cannot anchor what God has already commissioned to fly. Forgive, realign, rise. Because the world doesn't need another bitter survivor. It needs a healed carrier of divine frequency, and that chosen one is you. There's a divine weight resting on you, and no, it's not a burden. It's a mantle, a sacred, undeniable evidence that you've been marked by God for something that transcends trends, culture, and logic. This isn't a season of guessing anymore. It's the season of stepping in. The blue power you carry isn't a suggestion. It's a summons. It is not waiting to be validated. It's waiting to be released. Have you ever felt like you were too much for certain people? Too intense, too sensitive, too different? That's not by accident. People who carry diluted callings often get uncomfortable around pure anointing. But you were never meant to dim what heaven designed to shine. As Romans 11:29 says, "For God's gifts and his call are irrevocable." Your destiny is not optional, and neither is your activation. But here's the key. Blue power cannot function in contaminated environments. Your clarity needs clean air. Your discernment still needs water. You must unplug from anything that blurs your vision, be it toxic relationships, relentless distractions, or atmospheres that keep your spirit under siege. Like a harp out of tune, even a holy vessel can emit noise when surrounded by chaos. What have you been tolerating that God already told you to leave behind? Jonah ran from his assignment and ended up in a storm that endangered others. His disobedience didn't just affect him, it shook the boat. But the moment he surrendered, God redirected the path. Your delays aren't always attacks. Sometimes they're God waiting for your alignment. You've been misunderstood, yes. Called dramatic, overly spiritual, aloof. But your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's your divine radar. Jesus wept at Lazarus's tomb, not because he was weak, but because he was deeply tuned in to the spiritual and emotional atmosphere. Your tears are not signs of fragility. They are signs of divine connection, and those who carry blue power often cry before they conquer. Look at Deborah in Judges 4. She wasn't waiting for applause. She carried prophecy, clarity, and war strategy in silence until the appointed time. When the moment came, her words activated armies. Like her, you've been sitting under a tree of obscurity, but you carry the power to release nations with a sentence, and that moment is near. Have you noticed how certain people try to shrink you with praise that sounds like critique? You're too intense, they say, or you're just sensitive. But Elisha's double portion anointing came from following Elijah through uncomfortable levels of obedience. Blue power is not casual, it is confrontational, not by tone but by truth. Let's be honest, darkness has tried to kill your momentum. Remember when Martin Luther King Jr. was deemed too radical for seeking justice through peace? His nonviolent resistance was labeled dangerous because it exposed the violent roots of a false system. But his presence broke cycles. That's blue power, silent yet seismic, and history still trembles at his obedience. In contrast, take the story of King Saul. He had the position, but not the alignment. When he chose people-pleasing over divine instruction, the anointing left him. His jealousy toward David poisoned his legacy. He died not because of external warfare, but internal rebellion. That's what happens when you try to control what was meant to be surrendered. Could it be that your battles are intense because your mantle is pure, and the enemy knows he can't corrupt it? Even now, heaven is echoing Isaiah 60 verse 1 over you. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. You can no longer afford to hide. Your voice was designed to pierce atmospheres. Your presence was crafted to destabilize demonic systems. Your words were meant to awaken the sleeping, and the enemy is terrified of your emergence. You don't need to prove anything. David wasn't invited to the battle, yet still carried the victory. He didn't wear Saul's armor. He used what God had trained him with in secret. You too have been trained in obscurity. But now the stage is divine. You weren't called to fit. You were called to disrupt. And like Moses returning to Egypt with nothing but a staff and a call, you are returning to the places that once rejected you with a new power they cannot ignore. How long will you wait to activate what's already in you? The delay is over. The doubt is done. This isn't the time to play small. It's the time to manifest fully. Speak, write, move, pray, lead. Do it with boldness. Because those who carry blue power were never called to blend in. They were born to break cycles, shatter chains, and birth legacy. John 14:12 reminds us, "Whoever believes in me will do the works I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than these." That promise isn't poetic fluff, it's prophetic truth. So take your place, chosen one. The blue power within you is not just spiritual, it's strategic, and it's time for manifestation. Rise, not just physically, but spiritually. Rise with eyes wide open and your soul grounded in truth. This isn't an emotional high, it's divine positioning. You are not walking randomly. Every step is ordered. Every delay was a redirection. Every door that didn't open was mercy in disguise. Have you ever entered a room and felt something shift even before a word was spoken? That's because your presence isn't just human, it's prophetic. You carry the anointing to re-establish divine order in environments poisoned by confusion. You carry the presence of the one who restores what was lost, reveals what was hidden, and uproots what was falsely planted. And this isn't something you learned, it's something you were born with. Jeremiah 1:5 confirms it. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. This blue power is not about grandeur, it's about alignment. When you walk into chaos, heaven follows. When you speak into disorder, clarity arises. Like Nehemiah rebuilding the ruined walls of Jerusalem, your life is not a vacation, it's a construction site. Every word, every prayer, every action is a brick laid in divine assignment. You restore what others walked away from. You carry what others abandoned. But let's be clear, not everyone will understand. Have you ever tried to explain your vision to people who only see with carnal eyes? It drains you, because what you carry isn't logical, it's spiritual. Matthew 13:13 says, "Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. Stop exhausting your spirit trying to be understood by those who aren't assigned to recognize you. Some will be drawn to you, others will be disturbed by you. And that's okay. Jesus didn't come to be liked, he came to be light, and light exposes. What if your silence is speaking louder than your words? What if your walk is more prophetic than your sermons? What if your very presence is disrupting hell's agenda without you even knowing it? That's blue power. Esther didn't preach. She positioned. In a palace of compromise, she carried the authority of obedience. Her presence alone shifted the fate of a nation. You too have been placed for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. But like her, you must walk with both awareness and boldness. The anointing will make room for you, but it's your obedience that will keep you in the room. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a voice of resistance in Nazi Germany. His refusal to conform cost him his life, but birthed a legacy of righteousness. Now contrast that with Benedict Arnold, whose betrayal for temporary gain cursed his name with shame. Both were given platforms. One surrendered to truth, the other sold it. Could it be that your rejection was God's protection from becoming another casualty of compromise? You are not who you were before. The crushing was not wasted. The pruning wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Romans 5:3-4 declares, "We glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint. Look at the forest after a wildfire. What looks like devastation is actually the beginning of restoration. The ash becomes fertilizer. The roots deepen. Life returns stronger, richer, more focused. Your blue power operates the same way. It doesn't just survive storms, it transforms because of them. Are you finally ready to stop dimming what God ignited? Your surrender has already activated your authority. The fire that once tried to destroy you is now the very thing that announces your emergence. Isaiah 61:3 promises, "To bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning." You wear that crown now, and it's time to walk like it. So let the blue power flow, not to impress, not to perform, but to obey, because the world is groaning for the manifestation of those who carry true light, and heaven has already given you permission to shine. Now that you are finally aware of the blue power that resides in you, there's no turning back. The veil has been torn, the silence has spoken, and your identity is no longer in formation. It is in revelation. Have you ever felt the deep inner shift that happens when truth breaks through the fog of confusion? That shift is happening now. You've crossed the threshold where excuses expire and destiny begins. God isn't waiting for you to feel ready. He's calling you to respond. The training is over. The pain was not random. The betrayals were not just emotional. They were prophetic markers that heaven was forming a warrior, not a victim. Romans 8:18 reminds you, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." And now that glory is knocking at your door. The world doesn't need another echo. It needs your frequency, your real, raw, heaven-ordained sound. This blue power in you doesn't require validation. It carries divine credentials. It doesn't require applause. It provokes alignment. What if your presence is the interruption someone's spiritual cycle has been waiting for? What if the fire you survived wasn't meant to burn you, but to ignite everyone around you? You are not asking for light. You are the light. And when you step into dark places, you don't have to explain why they flicker into clarity. People may not understand the weight you carry, but they'll feel it. That's because the blue power manifests not in performance, but in presence. Not through noise, but through knowing. Just like Paul, who went from persecutor to prophet, your life is a living scroll being written by God's hand. From Acts 9, when the light knocked him off his horse, to the letters that reshaped early church theology, Paul never went back to being Saul once his eyes were opened. In the same way, you've seen too much, felt too deeply, overcome too many storms to go back to playing small. Your transformation is your testimony, and the enemy knows it. That's why you've fought so hard. That's why systems tried to choke your confidence. But what the enemy tried to break, God rebuilt in silence. Today, like Joseph rising from prison to palace, you are being positioned not just for breakthrough, but for leadership. Have you realized that every delay was designing your spiritual DNA for dominion? Look at Malala Yousafzai, shot for speaking truth, yet now an international symbol of courage and education. Or Judas Iscariot, who walked with power but sold his soul for silver. One surrendered to purpose and shook the world. The other surrendered to greed and ended in despair. Both had access, but only one carried the integrity to steward the light. The blue power in you will offend people who prefer shadows. It will disturb cycles that thrive on conformity. But you weren't made to be digestible, you were made to be divine. Isaiah 61 commands it, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." So arise, shine, move forward. This divine energy doesn't wait for applause. It activates atmospheres. It doesn't chase approval. It brings corrections. Can you feel the urgency in your bones, the weight behind your steps, the trembling in your spirit when you hold back what you were born to release? That's not fear. That's confirmation, like a glacier pressing silently through stone, reshaping landscapes 1 inch at a time. Your life is a transformation in motion. You bring order without effort, peace without performance, breakthrough without bragging. You're not the same. You've been refined, rewired, released. So take the first step, say the first yes, open your mouth, walk through the door, send the message, stand in the place. You are no longer waiting, you are already walking, and as you walk, the blue power flows. It doesn't need a stage, it needs your surrender. It doesn't need a plan, it just needs your yes. Because heaven has already decided, and now so must you. Let it flow, let it rise, let it shine. Chosen one, you've made it here not by chance but by divine summons. If your spirit was trembling while you listened, that wasn't emotion, that was activation. The hidden green power God planted in you is no longer dormant. It's alive, pulsing, awakening like a seed that's been waiting for the right season to break the ground. And this is your season. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're not confused. You are anointed. And the reason the pressure was so heavy is because the power inside you is just as weighty. You're not being called to rise just for yourself. Your alignment is someone else's breakthrough. Your obedience is someone else's answered prayer. Your presence is someone's secret healing. So don't shrink. Don't wait for the world to approve what heaven already confirmed. You are not waiting in favor. You are walking in it. That quiet grace you carry, that fire behind your calm, that's not personality. It's divinity. The green power is proof that what was hidden in you wasn't small. It was sacred. And now heaven is saying, it's time to let it out. If this message found your soul and lit something that had been buried under doubt, I need you to do this. Like this video, to let the algorithm know that prophetic voices still matter. Share it with someone who needs to remember who they are. Comment 777 if you feel God just confirmed something you didn't even tell anyone about. And subscribe, because I promise you, there's more. There's always more when heaven is speaking. And listen, whether you gave through super thanks or you simply showed up with an open heart, I honor you. I bless you. I thank you. You are proof that the remnant is still alive, that those marked by God still exist. And if nobody else told you today, I see you, I value you, and heaven is backing you. So walk out of this moment differently, charged, focused, free. You're not just living anymore, you're releasing something eternal. This is not just a message, this is a move. And you, yes, you, are the vessel. May the green power rise in you with unstoppable clarity. May heaven flood your path with direction. May your obedience set generations free. Now go. You're not just chosen, you're activated. Chosen one, have you ever felt a quiet force within you, one so unexplainable yet so undeniable? It's not just a gift, it's not a skill, it's not charisma or talent. It's deeper than all of that. It's a sacred current that has pulsed beneath the surface of your life since the day you were born. It's divine, it's hidden, and it's real. In spirit, it has a name, the blue power. This isn't fantasy. This isn't wishful thinking or self-help fluff. The blue power is a holy force God embedded into the ones He chose, long before they ever knew His name. It is ancient. It is pure. It is dangerous to darkness. And if you're here, reading this, then it means one thing. God has already marked you. You didn't stumble upon this message. You were drawn here, and maybe, just maybe, you've always known there was something different about you, something heavy on your spirit, a calling you could never fully silence. Heaven hasn't forgotten you. The world may have overlooked you, but God never has. And now He's saying, it's time to awaken what I've placed in you. Before we dive deeper into this sacred revelation, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to those of you who have supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity fuels this light. You are part of this divine movement. And for everyone feeling stirred right now, drop a 777 in the comments to align your spirit with what heaven is activating in you today. Yes, 777, God's number of completion and spiritual perfection. Now, take a deep breath, get still, because what comes next will confirm what your soul has always suspected. Let's go deeper into the mystery of the blue power and why you were born to use it. God's chosen one, the hidden blue power. God gave you. It's time to use it. What is the blue power that has been stirring inside your spirit? In our physical dimension, the color blue often speaks to serenity, clarity, and depth. Oceans mirror it, the sky wears it. Wisdom traditions use it as a symbol of calm. But in the spiritual dimension, where frequencies shape destinies, blue is not simply a color, it is a code, a divine wavelength vibrating with the frequency of revelation, truth, and sacred authority. It's the hue of heaven's justice, echoing like a trumpet through your soul. You weren't just given an aura, you were assigned a signal. Blue is the language God speaks through the chosen. It is the color wrapped around Moses' tabernacle curtains. It is the sapphire pavement beneath God's feet. In Ezekiel 1:26, above the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli. This isn't symbolic flair, it's architectural theology. Blue appears where divinity intersects the human realm. Just as Jesus' transfiguration in Matthew 17:2 lit the mountaintop with a luminous glory as bright as the sun, his garments pulsed with a bluish white, like lightning caught in cloth. Why? Because blue marks proximity to the throne. But why does this matter to you? Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift even before you spoke? Why do strangers feel safe enough to pour their pain into your silence? What is this invisible force that draws people toward your presence, yet makes enemies bristle at your peace? And why has the enemy fought your identity harder than any possession or relationship? Because you carry blue power, and that power is dangerous to darkness. You are not just sensitive, you are resonant. Like a tuning fork struck by heaven, your life emits frequencies others cannot decipher but always feel. This is spiritual physics. The blue power is coherence between your spirit and the divine blueprint written in God's own frequency. Psalm 89:14 declares, "Righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Love and faithfulness go before you." This power in you is not ornamental, it is judicial. You don't control the environment by force, you calibrate it by spiritual gravity. When you walk in alignment with your calling, you restore balance, like a magnetic pole realigning a scattered compass. People calm down around you because your spirit hosts heaven's equilibrium. That is not charisma. That is covenant. That is your fingerprint marked in blue. This power gives you the courage to move forward when the system tries to erase your name. It gives you clarity in rooms full of fog. Isaiah 11:2 speaks of this spirit resting upon you. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the spirit of counsel and of might. You were made for holy disruption, not performance. Pope John Paul II, a shepherd of courage under communist oppression, once said, "The future starts today, not tomorrow." He understood something many never grasp. When your identity is rooted in the divine, your authority does not begin with applause. It begins with presence. And yes, even the enemy recognizes it. Adolf Eichmann, architect of the Holocaust, also operated under an invisible power, one of spiritual inversion. A Nazi bureaucrat with a chilling sense of order, his obsession with control eventually led to chaos, death, and eternal infamy. His story stands as a grim mirror to yours. When divine power is denied and distorted, it becomes a curse. Contrast that with Zariah, a once overlooked art student who began having vivid dreams of light flooding cities. She started painting what she saw, swirling blue skies over dark alleyways, rivers splitting cracked lands. Her pieces went viral, but not for fame. People reported being healed emotionally by just standing in front of them. Some wept, others felt peace. No theology, no pulpit, just brushstrokes dripping with spiritual resonance. That was blue power at work. The blue morpho butterfly dazzles not because of pigment, but because of structure. Its wings refract light into frequencies the human eye reads as brilliant blue. It's science and wonder dancing in unison. You too don't shine because of what's on the surface. You shine because of how you're built, layer by layer, for heaven's light to refract through you. Exodus 28:31-32 describes the robe of the high priest. Make the robe entirely of blue cloth. Why? Because the one who enters sacred places must carry the authority of the realm he enters. You are that priest. You are that vessel. And the blue power isn't borrowed, it's embedded. So no, this power isn't optional. It is identity. It's why silence has felt heavy on your chest, why compromise made you sick, why shrinking never worked, because heaven didn't mark you to blend in. It branded you to carry its light, like a secret architecture etched inside the soul. Blue power isn't just what you carry, it's who you are becoming. It evolves as you evolve. Like a star collapsing inward to become a supernova, your most intense pressure seasons are often signs that your spiritual gravity is increasing. Romans 8:19 says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." All of creation is coded to respond to those who awaken this frequency. You're not just here to survive, you're here to reveal. But revealing isn't comfortable. You've likely experienced seasons where your voice trembled more than it roared, where silence wrapped around you like a cloak. This wasn't weakness, it was spiritual gestation, like Elijah hiding in the cave in 1 Kings 19:12, waiting not for the earthquake nor the fire, but for the whisper. The blue power doesn't crash, it hums, and its hum breaks chains that shouting never could. But what happens when the world doesn't recognize what's inside you, when your obedience costs you relationships, when walking in integrity means walking alone? Is this loneliness or consecration? Is it exile or elevation? That question haunted Adrian, an aerospace engineer who left a prestigious lab because he refused to alter scientific data for a defense contractor's cover-up. He walked away from 6 figures and public esteem, but something inside him whispered, "You're not betraying the world, you're aligning with heaven." Today, Adrian mentors youth in underserved communities, teaching quantum theory with a side of faith. He tells them, truth is not expensive, but it will cost you everything. Contrast that with Valeria, a rising political analyst known for manipulating narratives to gain influence. She once leaked private information to undermine a rival and became the youngest senior advisor in her firm. But what came next? Paranoia, isolation, addiction. Her platform grew, but her soul shrank. The absence of blue power does not create neutrality. It creates distortion. That's why you, as a chosen one, must protect what you carry. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." This is not metaphor, it's neurological. The heart has its own magnetic field, 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. What you feel internally creates measurable frequencies around you. Blue power operates in this realm. It's not limited by logic, it is activated through alignment. There's a story told in whispers about a boy named Elias who never quite fit in. He would sit under trees, drawing patterns no one understood. He once told his teacher, "These are maps from God." Decades later, those same sketches matched ancient glyphs discovered in a long-lost desert civilization. No degree, no fame, just deep knowing. The blue power had whispered truths that history had yet to catch up to. Your life might carry similar strange signs, visions, symbols, divine timings. But what if the very things that made you feel out of place are actually proof you're plugged into heaven's current? When whales sing across oceans, their vibrations can be heard hundreds of miles away, not because they shout, but because their frequency is pure. The deeper the resonance, the farther the reach. That is the law of acoustic energy, and a metaphor for your spiritual reach. When your soul aligns with truth, your impact transcends geography and time. Isaiah 61 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." But this isn't a spotlight moment, it's a seismic one. You are not just being seen, you are being felt. This message was never meant for the crowd. It wasn't crafted to entertain or validate everyone. It was spoken into existence for the marked ones, for those who have always felt a pulse under their ribs that no one else seemed to hear. A spiritual current running just beneath the surface of ordinary life. Blue power is not loud, but it's undeniable. And its presence in your life is proof that heaven never overlooked you, even when the world did. This power was placed in you, not for show, but for sacred function. It doesn't need spotlights or stages. Like the burning bush that caught Moses' attention in Exodus 3:2, it reveals itself in ordinary moments that suddenly feel charged with the supernatural. That's what this power is, divine charge embedded in your human experience. Have you ever noticed how certain spaces feel heavier when you enter? It's not superstition, it's your spirit detecting frequency shifts, your internal resonance aligning or rejecting what's in the room. That's not paranoia, that's a prophecy. That's why the applause of the world has never fully satisfied you. Not because you're ungrateful, but because something in you longs for authenticity, not attention. As a child, you likely sensed things before they happened. You didn't always have the language for it, but your body knew. The unease before a conversation, the knowing before someone's secret was confessed. And when others called it weird, a part of you wondered if something was wrong. But Psalm 139:14 whispers otherwise. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your wiring is sacred. Elijah didn't hear God in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. It was the still small voice that carried revelation. 1 Kings 19:12. That's how blue power works. Discreet but weighty, invisible but disruptive. You've likely had moments where silence felt louder than shouting, where your stillness unsettled people more than noise ever could. Catherine, a renowned trauma psychologist, often speaks about emotional pattern mapping, the ability to read others' trauma signatures without words. She grew up being dismissed as too intense, too deep. But today, she transforms lives by sitting in spaces others avoid. I don't fix people, she says. I witness them until they remember who they are. That's blue power in clinical form. Yet not all use their gift righteously. Darius, once a celebrated hedge fund prodigy, weaponized his sensitivity. He used emotional pattern recognition to predict and manipulate market behavior, crushing competitors before they even moved. His net worth soared, but his soul disintegrated. In his final interview before vanishing from public life, he confessed, I can predict everything except who I've become. Do you ever feel restless even when life appears just fine? That inner tension isn't failure, it's formation. God uses dissatisfaction as a compass. Proverbs 20:27 says, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all his innermost parts. That searching within you, it's not emptiness, it's encoded instruction. The sacred doesn't shout, it whispers. That's why your uniqueness was never meant to be explained, it was meant to be walked in. You may have followed the crowd once, but something in you always knew, this isn't who I am. That wasn't rebellion. That was spiritual self-defense. There's a boy named Elias whose story has circled quietly for years. As a child, he would sketch patterns he saw in his dreams, circles within spirals, numbers within colors. His teachers thought he was autistic, maybe obsessive. Years later, those same sketches were found to match sacred geometric inscriptions from an ancient Syrian monastery uncovered by archaeologists. No one trained him, no one taught him, but heaven remembered. Blue power imprints truth before the world has categories for it. You might have similar moments. Have you ever picked up someone's sadness before they said a word? That's not coincidence. That's spiritual sonar, a God-given radar that tunes you into frequencies others ignore. The mycorrhizal networks of trees, especially ancient sequoias, communicate through underground fungal webs. Scientists now call it the wood wide web. Trees exchange nutrients and warnings across miles. Hidden, silent, precise. Sound familiar? Your gifts may be buried, but they are never dormant. They've been networked in the spirit all along. And maybe you've asked yourself, why does my presence make some people uncomfortable before I even speak? That discomfort isn't your fault. It's their spirit reacting to what yours already carries. Light exposes. Leviticus 20:26 speaks a hard but holy truth. You are to be holy to me, because I have set you apart from the nations to be my own. Being set apart was never about isolation. It was about designation. And so, as you begin to recognize these signs, not just as quirks but as confirmation, understand this. You are not strange. You are aligned. You are not lost. You are calibrated. And this blue power was not given to make you famous. It was given to make you ready. You've always felt it, haven't you? That sudden knowing when someone's words don't match their spirit. You've seen smiles that felt like shadows, compliments that carried subtle daggers. You've sensed storms long before they broke. This isn't anxiety. This isn't overthinking. It's discernment, spiritual pattern recognition, wired into your very being. 1 Corinthians 2:15 says, "The person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things, but such a person is not subject to merely human judgments." That's the paradox you live in. You see what others miss, but they often can't see what you carry. This knowledge has guarded you, yes, but it's also set you apart, sometimes painfully so. Have you ever wondered why your peace unsettles some people? Your gift isn't loud, but it reverberates. You don't try to read people, but you often feel them before they even speak. It's as if your presence is tuned to subatomic spiritual frequency, measuring vibrations others don't know they emit. This isn't superstition, it's quantum-level empathy. Like a gravitational field, your spirit pulls hidden truth into the light. Joseph in Genesis experienced this kind of insight. Interpreting Pharaoh's dreams wasn't about talent, it was divine frequency alignment. Genesis 41:39 says, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you." Joseph didn't campaign for leadership. He was elevated because he could feel what others could only guess. This is why your gift can also isolate you. When people can't explain you, they often exclude you. But here's the truth. You were never built for mass validation. You were designed for divine confirmation. Not everyone will understand your atmosphere-shifting presence, and that's okay. John 3:8 reminds us, "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." Some time ago, a woman named Mireya worked as a hospice nurse. She wasn't famous, but everyone felt something shift when she entered a patient's room. Family members often said, "It's like the air changes when she walks in." She didn't speak much. She simply listened. Yet even in silence, people sobbed, confessed, and softened. One elderly man on his deathbed held her hand and whispered, "You carry something holy. I don't know what it is, but I trust it." That's blue power. And then there are those drawn to you as if by magnetic force. People open up to you on trains, in grocery lines, in elevators, seeking counsel they never intended to share. Why? Because your spirit speaks even when your mouth is still. You walk with spiritual mass, a gravitational pull shaped by heaven. That's not charisma, that's mantle. Do you notice how you never intended to lead and yet do people follow? That was David. He wasn't chasing thrones, he was tending sheep. But 1 Samuel 16:13 says, "From that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. The anointing finds you. And once it does, rooms change. Not because you take over, but because heaven stands with you." This is what it means to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Thermometers reflect the atmosphere. Thermostats regulate it. You carry calibration power. You don't just absorb chaos, you neutralize it. And not through control, but through presence. Your calm isn't passive, it's an active spiritual force. Desmond Tutu, the late South African Archbishop and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, embodied this mystery. In the darkest days of apartheid, he often walked through crowds of armed soldiers without raising his voice. In one account, surrounded by police who tried to intimidate him during a protest, he simply said, "You have already lost. You just don't know it yet." And then he smiled. That peace was not naivety. It was divine defiance. His presence carried the weight of a realm far greater than any political regime. That's the mystery of your anointing. Sometimes the world resents what you carry because it reminds them of what they've rejected. Of course, not everyone responds well. Some resist you. Some try to diminish you. That's what happened to Raina, a corporate executive known for quiet leadership. She didn't demand authority. She simply walked in it. But a jealous colleague, envious of her influence, began a smear campaign. Raina was demoted without cause. Months later, when that same department collapsed due to internal corruption, the board reinstated her and apologized. What stood out? Raina never defended herself. She let presence speak. The spirit defended what man tried to destroy. Nature reflects this reality. A lion doesn't roar to dominate. It roars to signal presence. But often, its very silence communicates more power than its sound. When the lion walks, the savannah stills. You walk with that same rhythm, not to control, but to remind creation that divine alignment is near. And maybe you've asked quietly, why do I feel this responsibility even when no one sees what I do? The answer is simple yet sacred, because heaven sees, and heaven assigned it. The presence of God rests on you, not for applause, but for impact. So when the world tries to reduce your discernment to overthinking, when others treat your stillness as weakness, when your obedience costs you rooms you once thought you needed, remember this: your blue power does not respond to visibility. It responds to vibrational authority. You don't shift rooms by forcing your way in. You shift rooms because God walks in with you. Chosen one, what if your sensitivity was never meant to be a burden, but a divine blueprint? You've always felt life in high resolution. While others skim the surface, you dive into the depths. You hear sadness behind someone's laughter. You sense tension in a handshake. You find beauty in the way morning light touches a wall. These aren't quirks, they're codes, and your heart wasn't wired this way by accident. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." You've been close to the broken because you carry what heals them. Have you ever asked why you can't just let things go like others? When betrayal hits, it bruises deeper. When injustice rises, your chest aches. This is not fragility, it's sacred sensitivity. Your soul is a chamber designed to resonate with pain, joy, silence, and spirit all at once. It's spiritual physics. In sound design, there's a term called resonant frequency, the precise pitch at which something begins to vibrate. Your heart operates on heaven's resonant frequency. That's why you feel what others filter out. The prophet Jeremiah understood this torment. In Jeremiah 9:1 he cried, "Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for the slain of my people." He wasn't weak. He was wired to weep because he was assigned to heal. You may have been labeled too much, too emotional, too intense, but that's the language of a world afraid of depth. In truth, what they called too much was simply more than they could carry. And here's the mystery. Because you carry such depth, healing flows from you without effort. You don't have to try to fix people. They simply feel safe when they're near you. That isn't psychology. That's spiritual covering. Jacqueline Novogratz, founder of Acumen and one of the most impactful social entrepreneurs in the world, once said, "The opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is dignity." She built her life helping those discarded by the global system because she couldn't unfeel the stories she heard. She turned empathy into architecture, building solutions through compassion. Not everyone does that. Marcus, a once renowned motivational speaker, learned to mimic empathy on stage. He told stories of pain, but never processed his own. Behind the curtain, he was controlling, manipulative, cold. His platform grew, but his soul decayed. Eventually, scandal revealed he had been emotionally exploiting those who trusted him. His sensitivity had been cosmetic. And the cost? Everything. Galatians 6:7 warns, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." But you're different, because your empathy isn't performative. It's embodied. That's why people confess things they've never said before, why they cry in your presence without knowing why, You're not trying to be healing, you simply are. Have you noticed how you often cry at things others don't even blink at? Sabine. As a child, she would stop in the middle of play and begin praying for strangers she saw on the street, not because she was told to, but because she felt them. Her parents worried it was abnormal, but at age 25, she became a trauma therapist. Clients said they felt seen by her before even speaking. Her gift? She never dismissed her depth. She followed it like a compass. Octopuses, for example, have 9 brains and a nervous system that allows them to process and respond to emotional stimuli with stunning complexity. They can change color, texture, and posture based on mood and surroundings. It's not camouflage, it's emotional adaptation. Like you, they feel first, then act. You might wonder at times, why do people always find comfort in me even when I feel empty? It's because your spirit carries overflow, even when your body feels drained. God designed your soul with deep wells, not for draining, but for divine circulation. 2 Corinthians 1:4 affirms this. He comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. That's your divine echo. You feel deeply, so others can rise freely. So no, your emotions aren't liabilities. They're prophetic instruments. And the next time someone says, "You're too sensitive," remember, Jesus wept, and he raised the dead. Let's be honest, your journey hasn't been simple. The scars you carry didn't come from accidents. They came from battlefields. The pain wasn't random. The silence wasn't empty. That betrayal you couldn't explain. It wasn't personal. It was prophetic. You weren't being punished. You were being proven. Have you ever looked back and realized how many storms you walked through that should have drowned you? Those seasons of delay, the betrayals that felt like sharp knives in soft places, the confusion that clouded even your prayers, all of it was strategy. Hell isn't chaotic, it's calculated. And the attacks on your life weren't symptoms of weakness, but signs of your spiritual threat. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy." The enemy saw your potential long before you saw your reflection clearly. There's something terrifying to darkness about someone who keeps getting back up. Your life has felt like resistance training in the spirit. Every loss increased your capacity. Every disappointment deepened your discernment. You've been refined in ways you didn't even notice, like a sword under fire or a diamond under pressure. And if you've ever felt like darkness followed you, even when you were doing everything right, here's why. You're carrying light that unsettles every system of control it touches. Job never sinned, yet he lost everything. Why? Because God trusted his integrity. Job 1:8 reveals a terrifying truth. Have you considered my servant Job? The enemy didn't choose him. God offered him up as a vessel to display endurance. What if your suffering wasn't just endured, but entrusted? That's what happened to Miko, a concert pianist raised in a war-torn region. As a child, she learned to play on a broken keyboard by candlelight. Her parents were arrested for their faith. She practiced in silence while bombs shook the ground. Today she performs in peace conferences worldwide. Her hands still tremble, but when she plays, generals weep. "I was trained by sorrow," she once said. That's blue power. That's resilience anointed by purpose. Not everyone honors pain the same way. Lucas, once a rising theologian, used his suffering to justify bitterness. He twisted scripture to mask control, building a following based on fear rather than freedom. His platform grew, but his inner world collapsed. When exposed for spiritual manipulation, he disappeared from public life. His tragedy? He used his wounds as weapons instead of altars. Hebrews 12:15 warns, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." And maybe you've asked yourself, why do I keep attracting hardship even when I try to do right. Because your presence is friction in spiritual realms. You unsettle what is hidden, you confront what is comfortable, and before you even knew who you were, hell launched its campaign to break your identity, but it failed. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." Notice, it doesn't say weapons won't form, it says they won't win. Your pain, then, is not your disqualification, it's your anointing path. In metallurgy, there's a process called tempering, where metal is heated, cooled, then reheated repeatedly to strengthen it. If the temperature is too low, it shatters under pressure. But the right intensity produces flexibility and strength. You've been tempered. There's a woman named Celine who rarely speaks of her past. Abused, abandoned, discarded, she should have become hard and hateful. Instead, she became a counselor for women in prison. Her sessions aren't filled with lectures. They're saturated in silence, tears, and raw presence. "I don't rescue," she says. "I remind them they're still breathing, still chosen." That's power rising through wreckage. The lodgepole pine, native to wildfire-prone regions, only releases its seeds under extreme heat. Without fire, it cannot multiply. You too have endured flames, but instead of being reduced, you were released. Do you realize what that means? It means if you're still standing after all you've been through, you're not just surviving, you're being positioned. Every storm refined your voice. Every betrayal sharpened your wisdom. Every delay stripped away what could not carry your destiny. Romans 8:37 says, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us," not after the storm, in it. So no, you're not broken, you're battle-tested. And the next time you feel overwhelmed by your past, remember, the very weight that tried to bury you became the resistance that made you unshakable. Have you ever woken from a dream so vivid it lingered like smoke in your chest, as if it were more real than your waking life? Those images, symbols, names, and sensations that arrived without context. What if they were not imagination but instruction, not metaphor but message? What you've experienced isn't spiritual noise, it's divine frequency. That's the blue power speaking. The spiritual realm is rich with language, dreams, visions, nudges, whispers. These aren't random fragments of the subconscious, they are coordinates from heaven. Acts 2:17 says, "Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, your old men will dream dreams." When you carry blue power, your soul becomes receptive to that realm's communication. You begin to pick up on frequencies others dismiss as coincidence. Why do certain numbers follow you everywhere? Why do places you've never visited feel strangely familiar? Once, a young man named Armand kept dreaming of a golden door etched with Hebrew letters. He didn't understand it. Years later, while volunteering in Jerusalem, he stood before a sealed synagogue and wept. There, carved into the wood, was the same door. The rabbi told him that was the ancient gateway to the inner sanctuary, long forgotten. Armand had never studied Hebrew, never been religious, but the dream led him back to what was written in his spirit. That is how the Spirit whispers, in symbols deeper than reason. And now that you're aware of the gift, you'll begin to hear with new ears. Like tuning a radio, the more aligned your heart becomes, the clearer his voice will feel. Isaiah 30:21 assures us, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." But divine alignment comes with responsibility. When you carry blue power, you're not just tuned to heaven, you're activated to confront what offends it. Lies unsettle you. Corruption chokes your peace. You can't stand idly by while dignity is stripped from others. And that tension inside your chest, that's not rebellion, it's righteous fire. Jeremiah 29 says, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed I cannot. That burning in you is divine protest. Even when silence would keep you safe, your soul won't comply. You weren't built for silent complicity. You were forged for courageous clarity. Have you noticed how your spirit grows agitated in systems that promote injustice? Isabel, a corporate ethics officer, was once praised for her sharp mind and quiet loyalty. But when she discovered her company's hidden exploitation of overseas labor, she couldn't look away. She blew the whistle, costing her job, her status, and almost her reputation. Years later, those same reports led to major reforms across the industry. "I didn't do it because I'm brave," she said. "I did it because I couldn't sleep knowing the truth." That's blue power. Not flashy, just faithful. In contrast, Vincent was once an environmental consultant celebrated for his charisma. He faked data to protect the profits of industries poisoning rivers. His charm masked compromise, but nature doesn't forget. When lawsuits unraveled his lies, he lost everything. His downfall was not because of what he did, it was because of what he refused to confront. Proverbs 17:15 warns, "Acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, both are detestable to the Lord." Nature is allergic to deception. Certain species of birds, like the scrub jay, can remember exactly where they buried thousands of seeds, and if they think they've been watched while hiding them, they'll dig them up and move them. Truth, for them, is protection. Their instinct is survival through honesty. Creation teaches us, when you're wired for truth, you cannot rest in environments of secrecy. There's a girl named Leora, raised in a home where secrets were currency and truth was dangerous. But even as a child, she asked questions no one dared voice. She became a social worker in juvenile justice, helping teenagers who felt invisible. One day, a boy asked, "How do you always know when someone's lying?" She smiled, "Because I used to lie to survive. Now I live to set others free." Blue power gave her discernment. Trauma refined it into justice. And maybe you've asked, why can't I just mind my business like others do? Because you were never created to look away. You weren't called to echo. You were called to interrupt, to break cycles, to speak when the atmosphere demands silence. Ephesians 5:11 commands, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." So you, chosen one, are not dramatic. You are disruptive by design. You are heaven's intervention in human systems and the unrest you feel when truth is buried. That's not anger. It's alignment. Maybe you've wandered. Maybe you've fallen short in ways you haven't told anyone. Maybe you've run from your calling, not because you didn't believe, but because you were afraid of what it would cost. And yet somehow, even in your drifting, you never drifted too far. You always return, not to religion, not to routine, but to something deeper, a voice beneath the noise, calling you by name. Why do you still feel drawn to the Spirit, even after seasons of silence? That's not coincidence, that's resonance. Jeremiah 31:3 says, "I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness." What draws you back is not guilt, it's gravity. The blue power within you refuses to give up. Even when your faith flickers, your spirit keeps vibrating in the direction of home. Peter, the disciple, denied Jesus 3 times. His shame could have buried him. But after the resurrection, Jesus didn't scold him. He simply asked, "Do you love me?" John 21:17. Not, "Did you fail?" Not, "Why did you fall?" But, "Do you still burn?" Because God never calls the flawless. He calls the available. And you're still here, still standing. That means He's not done. Your failures didn't forfeit your future. They refined your lens. Blue power doesn't require perfection. It requires surrender. You don't need to be stainless. You just need to be willing. Have you noticed how, Even after all the wrong turns, something in you refuses to give up. There's a sacred dissatisfaction in you, an ache that success can't silence. You've had glimpses of love, moments of beauty, tastes of peace. And still, there's more. Not more attention, not more possessions, more presence. That longing is not ambition, it's divine agitation. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." That's not poetry, that's wiring. You were created to hunger for depth, not dopamine. Psalm 42:7 whispers, "Deep calls to deep in the roar of your waterfalls." That depth inside you isn't emptiness, it's calling. And when you finally stop chasing the surface and turn inward toward the flame, blue power activates like a hidden code aligning with its source. That's what happened to Ella, a high-level data scientist who, after climbing the tech industry ranks, found herself weeping in her office with no idea why. Her company had awarded her innovation, but her soul felt vacant. She left it all to study theology, and today she uses her understanding of algorithmic ethics to advocate for digital justice. "My success was information," she says, "but my calling was wisdom." In contrast, Damon, a wellness influencer with millions of followers, built a brand on spiritual alignment, but off-camera lived in contradiction. His obsession with validation masked deep emptiness. He plagiarized teachings, manipulated followers, and when exposed, spiraled into bitterness. Ecclesiastes 6:7 warns, "Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied." Do you ever wonder why worldly success doesn't satisfy you the way it seems to satisfy others? Because your spirit was designed to be ignited, not just entertained. Your inner unrest is the spirit's resistance to false alignment. When the soul is out of phase with heaven, even luxury feels like lack. There's a story, told in hushed reverence, about a man named Leif who worked as a lighthouse keeper on a desolate shore. Every morning he lit the flame, not because ships passed daily, but because he believed they might. One night, in a violent storm, a lone boat spotted that distant light and made it to shore. The captain, sobbing, said, "I was seconds from giving up." Leif had no social media, no recognition, no applause, just consistent obedience. That is what you're called to. Nature reflects this rhythm. The Arctic tern, a small bird weighing less than 5 ounces, migrates 44,000 miles a year between poles, guided not by sight, but by magnetic resonance within its biology. It follows invisible cues. It trusts the pull, and so must you. So when your soul burns for more, don't quiet it. Listen, that hunger isn't a flaw, it's the frequency of your calling. Isaiah 55:2 asks, "Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Let your fire speak. Let your ache become your answer. You weren't made for noise. You were made for movement, sacred, quiet, unrelenting. And the blue power in you will rise not when you're perfect, but when you're present." Let's not pretend this is casual. Of all the noise you could be absorbing, of all the distractions screaming for your attention, you're here, listening, reading. And even if your logic is on guard, your spirit is leaning in. Why does this feel more like remembering than discovering? You didn't stumble onto this by chance. This is what theologians call kairos, God's appointed time. It's the spiritual equivalent of a tuning fork, vibrating when struck by the exact frequency. Psalm 139:16 whispers, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." What you're sensing now isn't emotional hype, it's prophetic recall. You're not just learning something new, you're awakening something ancient, something already written. Because deep calls to deep. Blue power isn't an external badge, it's embedded resonance. It echoes like a forgotten language finally being spoken again. This is why you've been restless in shallow environments, why you've felt misplaced in rooms that looked right. Your soul was never meant for performance, it was meant for presence. And what's stirring now is not just hope, it's memory. In Exodus 3, when God called Moses from the burning bush, he didn't introduce a new destiny, he reactivated an old one. I have seen the misery of my people, God said, so now go, I am sending you. Exodus 3:7-10. Moses didn't feel qualified, but destiny doesn't consult your resume. It consults your wiring. There's a reason you feel drawn to this moment. Juliana, a neurosurgeon turned spiritual counselor, once confessed that during operations she often felt something in her hands that went beyond skill, like spiritual memory guiding her fingers. Years later, she left her surgical career to work with trauma victims. She said, "I wasn't changing careers, I was returning to design. That's blue power remembering its form. Not everyone follows the call." Take Aaron, a celebrity strategist who mastered the game of image building. He manipulated perception, architected illusions, and helped people look like truth they never lived. He knew better, but he chose platform over presence. When exposed, he admitted, "I built an empire with tools I knew were fake." Luke 8:17 warns, "There is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be brought out into the open." He didn't just fall. He collapsed under unreconciled resonance. Have you noticed how life has preserved you, even when you didn't deserve it? That's not karma, that's covenant. God's been walking with you, shaping you, strengthening you, and protecting what you were too wounded to see clearly. The repeated cycles, the blocked doors, the inexplicable nudges, they were never punishment. They were positioning. A woman named Raina lived in obscurity for decades. She was a voice teacher in a small town, known for her quiet eyes and thunderous discernment. One day, a young girl asked, "How do you know what song I'm meant to sing before I even open my mouth?" Raina replied, "Because your song was written long before you arrived. I just remember the sheet music. No pulpit, no fame, but heaven echoed through her." Nature understands encoded purpose. The axolotl, a strange aquatic creature, never undergoes full metamorphosis like other amphibians. It retains its youthful form for life, yet it can regenerate limbs, organs, even parts of its brain. Biologists call this neoteny, but in spiritual terms, it's preservation for purpose. Like you, it doesn't transform on demand. It waits for the exact appointed time to reveal what it can truly do. And now that time has come for you. Have you ever sensed that there's no going back? Not because you're better, but because your spirit has crossed a line. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" This is that new thing. The signs aren't just traits, they're clues. Clues pointing to a purpose far larger than the identity you've worn. Clues that heaven hid in plain sight until you were ready to see. Blue power is real. You've carried it all along. And now that you've remembered what your soul always knew, the only question is, will you walk in it? You may have wondered, if this blue power is really inside me, why has God held it back? The answer doesn't lie in your failure, it lies in heaven's timing. Like seeds resting beneath frozen soil, power doesn't always arrive with thunder. It waits until the ground has been shaped to hold it. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." And sometimes the most powerful things are hidden, not to be denied, but to be developed. You weren't forgotten, you were forged. Have you ever felt invisible during the seasons you prayed the hardest? That invisibility wasn't rejection, it was refinement. Moses spent 40 years in the desert, tending sheep before his burning bush moment. David was left out of the lineup when Samuel came to anoint a king. And even Jesus, Son of God, disappeared into the wilderness for 40 days before stepping into public ministry. Why? Because character must match calling. Power without formation becomes spiritual instability. In metallurgy, a blade heated too quickly becomes brittle. Only through controlled exposure to fire and stillness does steel become flexible and lethal. That's what your quiet season was doing, welding identity to authority. Romans 5:4 declares, "Perseverance produces character, and character, hope." Mina, a former Broadway actress, felt the sting of obscurity after leaving the stage to care for her ailing mother. For years, she questioned if she had wasted her life. But during those years, she wrote, journals turned into reflections. Reflections became poems. Poems became speeches. Today, she leads an organization that mentors young artists struggling with identity and grief. She once said, "I lost the spotlight, but I found my voice." Her delay wasn't denial, it was alignment. But not everyone embraces the weight. Rico, a motivational speaker with early fame, bypassed the process. He monetized charisma without inner transformation. When scandal broke, his platform collapsed under the weight of performance. Proverbs 19:2 warns, "Desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way?" Power untempered by wisdom becomes poison. And while you were being formed, a war was unfolding, one not around you, but within you. Have you noticed how intense the battle has been? Not over your possessions, but over your peace. The enemy isn't worried about your job, your popularity, or even your influence. He fears your clarity. He fears the moment you realize who you actually are, because once you wake up to your identity, your movement in the Spirit becomes seismic. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." That's why you've been under assault in subtle but persistent ways. Mental fatigue, spiritual confusion, sabotaged rest, sudden discouragement. It's not accidental, it's strategic. The enemy knows he cannot destroy what God has called, but he can distract it, delay it, diminish it, unless you wake up. And you are waking up. You're starting to feel the lies break down. The internal architecture of guilt, shame, fear, and self-doubt beginning to crack. Isaiah 61 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." The fog is lifting not because you forced it, but because heaven decided. Do you sense that pull lately? The holy tension between where you are and where you're meant to be. Lena, a once timid nurse, began waking at 3:33 every morning. No explanation, just a still voice that said, "Right." She finally obeyed. Her journal became a manuscript. That manuscript became a devotional that now travels underground through war zones, passed quietly between believers starving for hope. Her delay was divine incubation. The monarch butterfly lives this paradox. Before flight it must go still, sealed inside its chrysalis, dissolved into genetic soup. Not asleep, not dead, recoded. And when it emerges, it carries a memory of a path it has never flown, migrating thousands of miles guided by the sun. Scientists call this vector navigation. In the Spirit, we call it prophetic destiny. So if you've ever asked, why now? Know this, because the season has shifted. Heaven is declaring, enough waiting, enough hiding, enough wondering. The veil is lifting, and the womb of preparation is giving birth to motion. The silence is breaking because you're no longer being prepared. You are being positioned. 2 Timothy 1:6 urges, "Fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you." That's what's happening right now. You're remembering, you're stirring, you're rising, and the blue power that once felt distant is no longer dormant. Let's speak clearly now. The power in you isn't waiting for performance. It's waiting for permission. What's been dormant wasn't dead, it was deferred. And the unlocking doesn't require striving, it requires alignment. Do you know how rare it is in this world to be still? Not just quiet, but available. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the presence of intention. Like a tuning fork that resonates only when undisturbed, your spirit sharpens when the noise dims. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I'm God." Stillness invites the divine to speak what chaos drowns out. So here's where the unlocking begins. Silence, not just the external kind, but internal stillness, the surrender of all the frantic inner narratives. Step into a room where no one needs anything from you. Let your soul breathe. Speak these words aloud. God, show me what you've hidden inside me. That simple ask cracks open the spiritual vault. Have you ever paused long enough to notice the answers were already echoing inside you? From there, speak boldly. Declare truth out loud, not because God needs to hear it, but because your soul does. Proverbs 18:21 reminds us, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Say it. The blue power of God is rising in me. I walk with divine clarity. I carry spiritual authority. This isn't motivational hype. It's neurological reinforcement. The brain rewires itself through repetition, neuroplasticity, and your declarations become blueprints. Not positive thinking, prophetic thinking. Javier, once a shy linguistics professor, started praying declarations daily in his apartment, not just prayers, decrees. Within a year, his voice began shifting classrooms and lecture halls. Today, he teaches spiritual communication to diplomats. Language, he says, shapes destiny. His power didn't arrive in public. It emerged in stillness. Now it's your turn. Walk with courage. Say yes to what scares you. The conversation you keep postponing. The dream that feels too costly. The new version of you you've been delaying. Because blue power follows faith signals, not convenience. Hebrews 11:6 reminds us, without faith it is impossible to please God. Release the past, not by forgetting, but by unhooking from its hold. You can't carry divine power in a vessel still leaking old pain. Let it go. Bless those who broke you. Forgive what didn't apologize. Heal what's been repeating. Do you feel that subtle ache when you revisit past wounds? Like an anchor tugging at your momentum, that's where release begins. Not in denial, but surrender. Blue power requires a clean conduit, not perfect but open. In contrast, Lara, a popular author, clung to her pain because it gave her influence. Her brand was built on betrayal. When invited to heal, she refused, fearing it would ruin her edge. Slowly, her insight dried up. Her book stopped selling. Her voice lost resonance. She had power, but no flow. 2 Timothy 3:5 warns of those having a form of godliness but denying its power. But you know that hustle can't summon heaven. Blue power isn't a result of striving. It's sourced from stillness, surrendered steps, and sustained presence. Stay close to the source. Feed your spirit. Keep your heart rooted in Scripture. Let the Spirit, not pressure, lead. And when you do, something shifts. Isaiah 55:12 promises, "You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace." The tension in your emotions lessens, your internal chaos quiets. Suddenly, doors open. Not because you knocked, but because your frequency changed. Have you noticed how people begin to gravitate toward you when you're at peace with yourself? It's not charisma, it's alignment. Your voice begins to carry weight in the spirit. You no longer chase impact, it begins to chase you. Like the gravitational pull of a star dense with purpose,